tuning in for my video on the 10 most famous dogs in history. This was actually a really cool video to do research for. I enjoyed learning about these dogs. Some of them I knew, some of them I didn't, but today I want to introduce them all to you. The first dog on my list is Leica. She was the first dog in space, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. It's L-A-I-K-A. I believe it's Leica. She was sent into space by the Soviet Union in Sputnik 2 in 1957 after being found on the streets of Moscow. She was a rescue dog and was sent into space. Not much was known about the effects of space on animals, and in the hurry to beat the Americans in the space race, Leica was sent into orbit without a way to return to Earth. She became the first living creature to orbit the Earth, which is pretty cool. Originally, it was thought that she passed away 4 days into her journey, but as we've learned more, obviously dogs like Leica and people, we're always doing research and science is always changing and we're learning things. So it was actually revealed in 2002, sadly, that she only lasted around 5 hours before overheating and passing away. So a little bit of a sad story, but she was the first dog in space and definitely made a huge mark on history for the canine species. Second on my list is Balto. Many of you have probably heard of Balto. Some of you have seen the movie. I know my kids love that movie and we've watched it many times. Balto was a Siberian Husky who saved the town of Nome, Alaska in 1925. In 1925, the town of Nome was hit with an outbreak of diphtheria, which is a deadly and very, very contagious disease. The only antidote was hundreds of miles away in Anchorage, and thanks to bad weather and an abundance of snow, the only way to get it was by dog sled. There was a relay of dog sleds that passed the antidote along, but the final leg was led by Balto, who heroically led his team through 54 miles of blizzards at temperatures as low as 40 degrees below zero. When the team successfully made it to Anchorage to get the antidote, Balto was hailed a hero. In 1995, his story was the subject of a very now famous animated movie. He's also been immortalized by a statue in Central Park, and his taxidermied body is actually open to viewers at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. The third most famous dog in history on my list is Tintin. Tintin was originally rescued from a World War I battlefield, and he appeared in many different films throughout the 20s and 30s until his death in 1932. He even received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1960. Checkers is the next dog on my list. Checkers was Richard Nixon's Cocker Spaniel. A lot of US presidents have owned pets, but the most famous one of all was Checkers. In fact, September 23rd is often referred to as Checkers Day. It was designated as National Dogs in Politics Day in honor of Checkers. He was the dog of President Richard Nixon, although he never actually lived in the White House. Nixon had been accused of a financial scandal, which threatened his role in the Senate. During a televised address, Nixon denied the accusations and then introduced Checkers. However, what Americans really remembered most about this speech was his adorable black and white Cocker Spaniel puppy. Some historians even say that showcasing his dog during what is now famously known as the Checkers speech may have actually saved Nixon's campaign. Greyfriars Bobby was a small but very tenacious terrier in the 19th century. He is one of the most famous dogs in Scotland due to his loyalty and unwavering diligence. According to the story, Greyfriars' dog belonged to a night watchman named John Gray, who worked for the Edinburgh City Police. After he died, Bobby sought out his grave in the Greyfriars Kirkyard. Bobby diligently sat upon the gravestone until he died 14 years later. He was then buried in Greyfriars Kirkyard just inside the gate. While some people do doubt the accuracy of that story, this famous dog continues to be an inspiration to many people. There are several monuments in Scotland erected in his honor. The next dog on my list is Chips. Chips was a mix. He was a German Shepherd, Malamute, and Collie mix, and he started his life as a regular family dog. During World War II, however, his family donated him to the War Dog Training Center. He was sent out with a handler to serve as a sentry dog, and in July of 1943, he and his handler were cornered on a beach by an Italian machine gun team. With no way out, Chips gallantly broke free and leaped headfirst into the pillbox where the gunners were hidden. The courageous dog forced the four men out, maintaining a tight hold on one of their throats. He served 8 campaigns and was returned to his family in December of 1945. Another amazing working dog, number 7 on my list, is Tracker. More than 300 search and rescue dogs aided their human counterparts in the months following the September 11th attacks, helping to find and uncover survivors from the piles and piles of rubble. Tracker and his police officer handler, James Symington, drove to New York City from Canada to help locate those trapped or no longer breathing underground Zero's rubble. Tracker and Symington are credited with finding the last survivor, a woman who had been imprisoned under heavy concrete and steel for more than 24 hours. Another extraordinary military dog on my list is Nemo. During the nearly 20-year span of the Vietnam War, the U.S. Armed Forces utilized over 3,500 military dogs, and Nemo was one of those dogs. The Viet Cong were incredibly sneaky, hiding expertly in the jungle, making it almost impossible to find them. This gave the Viet Cong a huge advantage over the U.S. Armed Forces. Thanks to their incredible sense of smell and hearing abilities, military dogs could alert their human counterparts to the presence of enemy soldiers, even when the soldiers couldn't be seen. Security Police Canine Nemo was among several military dogs stationed at the Tan Son Nhut Air Base as part of the security detail. While on watch, these dogs would alert soldiers of approaching enemies, but oftentimes they lost their lives shortly after vocalizing their barks as an early warning sign. On December 4th, 1966, Nemo and his handler successfully killed 2 Viet Congs, but not without suffering wounds of their own. A bullet entered Nemo's eye and left out of the side of his snout. Despite his injury, Nemo warded off any potential approachers by laying across his wounded handler's body until military paramedics arrived. He ended up losing his right eye and was retired shortly after. As a retired and decorated war veteran, Nemo accompanied recruitment officers hoping to gain canine enlisters. Even after losing his eye in battle, he still worked to recruit other officers, hopefully human and canine officers. That is amazing. Number 9 on my list is Mika. Everyone knows what Velcro is. We can't live without it. It's used worldwide on so many different things. It has just innumerable options for use on clothing and shoes, for use on home decor, everything, you name it, sports gear. Velcro is on so many things. Did you know that a dog was responsible for this awesome invention? On an autumn day in 1941, George de Mestral was out for a walk with his dog, Mika. When he returned home, he discovered that Mika's coat was covered with burrs that, although they weren't very sticky, were holding onto the fur but could also be easily removed. He took a look at the burrs under a microscope and discovered they had a natural hook shape. This discovery was the basis for his invention of a new 2-sided fastener that now we call Velcro, named for the French words velour and crochet. And finally on my list, last but not least, is Buddy. He was the first seeing eye dog in the USA. Morris Frank was 6 years old when he lost the vision in his left eye after a horseback riding accident. 10 years later, he became completely blind when a boxing match claimed his right eye. In 1927, Frank was 20 years old. He was a student at Vanderbilt University, and his father was reading him a newspaper article. The article was entitled The Seeing Eye, and it was written by an American dog trainer named Dorothy Harrison Eustace, who, while living in Switzerland, witnessed how veterans who'd lost their sight in World War I were being assisted by dogs. Frank was a very independent person. He had been for many years frustrated to rely on other people to guide him around, so he immediately wrote to Eustace, who arranged for him to come to Switzerland and meet one of these amazing dogs. In 1928, Morris Frank became the first American to be presented with a trained seeing eye dog, a female German Shepherd named Buddy. Frank spent 30 days in Switzerland with Eustace, learning how to work with Buddy, bonding with her, and learning to trust that she could safely navigate him through even the busiest city streets. It was during their time together that Frank and Eustace agreed to bring seeing eye dogs to other impaired Americans. Eustace agreed to provide financial backing for the endeavor under 2 conditions. 1, it would have to be proven that guide dogs could help the blind navigate through busy city streets, and 2, that the public would need to be educated to allow guide dogs in all public areas. Frank created the Seeing Eye, which was America's first institution that trained guide dogs for the blind. With Buddy by his side, the pair was instrumental in the creation and passing American access laws that would become the foundation of today's Americans with Disabilities Act. All of the dogs on this list are amazing heroes. They have all had a huge impact in our history. If you want to learn more about any of these dogs, just click the link below the video. All of my research is there, and you can spend hours like I did learning about all of these great dogs.